Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today, our guest is Marilyn Richards, member of the Jordan Board of Education and former principal in the Jordan District and Canyons District before the split. Welcome to the podcast, Marilyn.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's have you share with our audience where you grew up, where you went to college, maybe your first job in education, those types of things.
Okay. Well, I grew up in the West Jordan area. I attended Jordan School District schools, so I've been in Jordan District my entire life. I can say that. I attended the schools in Jordan District and eventually graduated from Bingham High School, class of 68. Yes, I'm old. Anyway, I went to BYU after that on a college scholarship and eventually got my bachelor's degree in physical education with an art minor, which is kind of an odd combination, but that's me. My first teaching position was in Jordan District at West Jordan Junior High, where I attended as a student. So it's kind of gone full circle that way. Actually, my very first job, I would like to tell you about that, is kind of like a Dairy Queen type fast food place called the Antifreeze. And I even continued working there after I got my teaching job too.
So. Where was that located?
It's in West Jordan. Yeah, it was. Okay. It's gone. It's long gone, but yeah. Anyway, fun times.
Speaking of West Jordan Junior High, I happen to know the current assistant principal at West Jordan Junior High. My son Aaron works for
really?
Dixie. Yeah, works for Dixie Garrison out there.
I guess I didn't know that. That's right.
He was at Joel P. and then he got moved over to West Jordan, I think, 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. I know it's a brand new building, so I know he loves it.
Exactly. It's state of the art. It's beautiful. Yeah. I'll have to look him up. He's a good guy. I've met him many times.
Well, there you go. And you can say, oh, I used to be the principal to your father. You can say, there you go. Well, yeah, you actually saw him when he was, I'm trying to think. He may have been, he was probably graduated from high school by the time you became the principal of Jordan. So, but you probably met him a few times.
Yeah, I did. Probably on an athletic field.
So if you were, you were a major in PE, had a minor in art. So you graduated from Bingham in 68. This is before Title IX. So did you have any opportunities to participate, or was it just neighborhood with all the kids in your neighborhood, or how did that work for you?
You know, most of my my participation was with like intramurals at the high school. I had a really, really good physical education teacher who believed in getting women's sports going. So competitively, no, we didn't compete with other high schools, but within the high school, we did compete. I competed in softball and volleyball, and those are my two favorites. And so shortly after I left and graduated, they did start the competitive sports, and I was so pleased to see that. So you went to the Bingham High that was out in Copperton, right at the mouth of the mine, right at the mouth of the canyon there. That's correct. That's correct.
And I've only seen that. Of course, it's been years since I've been out there, but I took my kids out there when they were younger. And is it currently a middle school, or have they even closed the building down now? Out in
Actually,
Copperton?
it's demolished. It's no longer there. It's a vacant lot.
Because back in those days, it would have been Jordan High on State Street and Bingham out in Copperton. And that was basically the two high schools in the Jordan district.
That was it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Bingham's been around since 1908. So.
And I think Jordan was 1906 or 7. So they were
6
probably
or 7, right
about
before
the same
it.
time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk for a minute, Marilyn, about some of the mentors you had in your life: parents, teachers, coaches, bosses, other administrators that affected you, that made a difference in the path you chose as a career.
Okay. Yeah, I think in contemplating mentors, I had a couple really strong teachers. One who was very responsible for me going into math later on. And then, of course, the physical education teacher that I talked about. And they both gave me a love for those two areas of education. And my parents, of course, were very supportive. I was the very, very first grandchild to go to college. And so it was very important that they make sure that I complete that. Very, very supportive of everything I did.
Excellent. Let me ask you a tough question.
Oh.
What's your biggest failure and what did you learn from it? And then failure could be like the biggest disappointment. So.
Yeah, well, you're going to think this is rather interesting, if you will, and I don't necessarily call it a failure because I succeeded anyway, at getting a bachelor's degree and that kind of thing. But originally, through high school, I thought I wanted to be an architect, because I did have some artistic skills and I had some math skills that I depended on. And so I wanted to be an architect. And when I checked into that major at BYU, there was one woman for 100 men in that particular major. And that scared me away. That scared me. And I've never been scared or afraid of competition, but that scared me. And so I went the other route. Pleased that I did, but it was kind of a wonder what if, so
okay,
that would be it.
Sure. And so you graduate from BYU. Your first teaching job is where again?
My first teaching job was at West Jordan Junior High.
West Jordan
now it's
Junior
West
High.
Jordan Middle School, yeah, and I taught there for 13 years, and then I went to Brighton High School and taught there for 3 years.
Oh, I had no idea. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yes,
You're
I taught
then.
math.
Okay.
I taught math there for 3 years after getting my master's degree and with a math emphasis. And then is when I decided I wanted to get more education. And so that's when I went for my administrative certificate and another master's. So I actually have 2 master's degree along with my bachelor's. Yeah. So.
Okay. And so that's, that explains why you and I get along so well, because as you know, I taught math for years and years while you were at Jordan. So then
exactly.
You go back to school, you get a second master's, and do you get an administrative job off the top? Is it a year later? How does that work? Where was your first, where did you become
Actually that year, the appointments were pretty slim. There was one vacancy and the man got it.
Big surprise there.
In fact, it was Ray Jensen, if you remember him.
Oh, I remember Ray.
Anyway, we were in the same administrative training class, and so he got the appointment, and I I got the opportunity to teach math at Bingham High School for 1 year, and then I got my appointment. Yeah.
Okay, so you taught at Bingham for a year. So you became an assistant principal at which school before you became?
Mount Jordan. Jordan Middle. Yes. For a year.
And so what year were you at Mount Jordan Middle? Because I'm
89, 90, maybe.
So 89, 90. So that would have been just about the time that I was giving up girls basketball. But of course, I didn't know a whole lot of people at Mount Jordan. I knew a couple of the PE teachers. So Did Bob Dowdle come there? Was he there after you were there or during that time?
He was there during that time. And also, Peterson, I can't think of his first name right now, right off the top of my head, but he was the PE teacher there.
Okay.
Along with Russ Thompson.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I tell you, that's 89, 90. That's 32 years ago. So then you're at Mount Jordan Middle School. You're an assistant principal for how many years? 2 years?
Just one.
And then you became the principal?
Nope. And then they were opening, well, not opening, but they were having the principal and the vice principal at South Jordan Middle School retire. So they had the principal all in line, and I went to South Jordan Middle School as his assistant principal.
And you were both brand new?
Brand new, yeah.
And so it was just you, it was you and he and two assistant principals, or just one? Just one. I handled all of the behavior and discipline. Well, yeah. That alone is your ticket to heaven. You were 1 year in a middle school as the only assistant principal. Yeah, that's
exactly that. Assistant principal, and that meant no hall monitors. They weren't even thought of then. So no hall monitors and no resource officer, a police officer. So it was pretty much up to me. Yeah.
Oh my. I have a comment to make, but I'll keep it to myself because
it was tough, but you know, we did fine.
Sure. And so you're at South Jordan for how long?
I was the assistant principal for 4 years, and then I became the principal there for 4 years. So I was there a total of 8 years at South Jordan Middle. Enjoyed every day of it.
And so then after your time at South Jordan, then that's the time when I got to know you, when you came over.
That's right. That's when I got to go to the big, beautiful Jordan High School on the hill. Absolutely. And I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, it was a great time when you were there. So you just decided that you had taught for what, 16, 17 years? And
17 years. Yeah.
Not that you were tired of, but you just decided I want to be an administrator. And so you went back, got your degree, and then obviously you got a job fairly quickly.
Right.
Okay. Well, I say that because, and I don't know how to put this delicately or indelicately. Well, you and I both know we've been in education long enough. There are some people that are career assistant principals, and I will trade you my assistant principal that I don't want anymore for your assistant principal who can't be any worse than mine. And then of course there's some that I don't know that that's the right way to put it, but it just seems that some people are forever in that assistant principal role. And then obviously the cream rises to the top and becomes principal. So think back to your time at Jordan High. What are some of your fondest memories of being there at Jordan? My memory is you were there, what, 4 or 5 years?
Almost 5 years. Yeah. My fondest memories there always deal with the people. And I'm not just talking the students, I'm talking the teachers and all of the support staff. The people made that place, that and along with the traditions. Jordan, of course, like Bingham High School, had wonderful traditions and ran deep. I remember them trying to get rid of the beet digger.
Yes.
I couldn't believe somebody was still trying to do that. And they're still the beet diggers, and I'm loving it. Tradition means a lot to me. And I love the beautiful building. I loved all of the events and activities that were there. Just good people. That's the bottom line. Good people all the way around. So,
well, let me ask you this. So you come from a junior high. You've spent many years teaching and administrating in the junior high. You spent a couple of years at Brighton at Bingham, but mostly in a junior high. You're the principal of a high school. What kind of, how do I, it's boy, all of a sudden you're into a high school and you think you know what's going on, but you get there and you find out at middle school, you're what? Maybe 4 or 5 nights a year where you're at the school, and then all of a sudden you're at a high school. You've got football every Friday, you got basketball every Friday, you got 6 or 7 spring sports, you've got school play, all these types of things. Was that a little bit of an eye opener, or you thought you knew what you were getting into, or you knew pretty well by now when you took it what you were getting into?
Well, after the fact, I look at that and I think, it's very real. You have day school and then you have night school, and it's just two full-time jobs almost, And yeah, it was quite an eye opener. I wasn't used to all of that time. I enjoyed that time, but it really was demanding. And that's when you appreciate having so many good people to support those things, and to be able to, assign one person here and one person there. I can't say enough about the good people and the support. That helped a lot. But that was a hard transition. You're right. Really hard.
So you come to Jordan High. I'm trying to think of the year. Remind me. 2000 and...
I came there in 99.
90. Oh, wow. Okay. So it's 99. You're at Jordan High. And let me phrase this question properly, because I was the AD there, and I might say that I never had a principal treat me as good as you. There were some that did, but none better than you. But getting to a high school, you have 3 or 4 assistant principals, you have an AD, all that's foreign to you in a middle school. And so think about, from your perspective, the role of an athletic administrator, which would have been me back then. How is that different now than it was when you first got there? Because now you look at it as a member of the Board of Education after all those years in administration. So just talk about some of the changes as you see it as the role of an AD in a high school.
Well, let me just first say that I had the best, and I'm not saying that just because you're in front of me. I really feel like I had the best, and that was such a good feeling to know that you were taking care of that end of things. Well, I learned, and I was learning every day, but I had the best, and I just felt like, you were so well trained, you were so well experienced, you were up on all state laws and legislation, and you were there, and I just knew I didn't ever have to worry. Now for ADs, I just think the responsibilities have just increased so much. Responsibility, demands on their time, what's expected of them. I just think that's really, really increased. And unless they're prepared and prepared well, I don't know how they would be able to succeed at that. I think of some of the schools who don't have a full-time AD, and I don't know how they function, especially the high schools, the big ones, the big high schools.
Absolutely. So let's talk for a minute, and you're familiar with this, is your position on the Jordan Board of Education, but the Jordan District now, I think last year or maybe it was the year before, but has gone to full-time ADs, obviously needed from my point of view and for yours. Talk about how that decision came around, because we still have some districts that maybe, or they just, keep rotating them type of thing. So talk for a minute about that.
Okay. Well, honestly, the discussion did come up, and luckily I had some experience and knew what was needed on the big high school level. And so I was able to speak to that and help my colleagues on the board. Of course, some of them already knew too, but my colleagues on the board, I felt like I helped them see that it was necessary. It's just something that had to be. And so and then our district administration, of course, Superintendent Godfrey, he knew what it was all about.
True. Anthony,
Absolutely.
who I might add, who people don't know this, but Anthony was an assistant principal for you at Jordan High.
Right.
You were his boss, and now he's your boss on the board. Well, no, I guess you're still his boss.
I'm still his boss, but that's okay.
Education.
But yeah, so he knew, and he knew what was needed and made sure that it happened. And I am so grateful that that that's the case right now in our high schools. It's definitely needed. I just wish we could get all of the ADs throughout the state trained appropriately and get them the experience and the support that they need in their jobs. It's a big job.
No,
we know that.
So you segued into that. So I was, let me throw this question that wasn't on the list that I sent you. You're familiar with Senate Bill 67 that didn't pass the legislature. Obviously, you and I had discussions, and so I obviously we know your thoughts on it. You think that it was really important to get them trained, but what do you see are maybe some of the avenues the UIAAA could take to when we fight this fight again next year to improve our odds? Because I don't know that it's boy, we had some real vocal superintendents in favor, but we had a lot of superintendents that wanted to keep the local control. They weren't real fond of having this money. And of course it was only, I shouldn't say only 150,000, but when you're spending 2.7 billion on a state budget, it's like asking a teacher for a candy bar type of a thing. And of course they didn't hesitate to give special ed teachers $5,000 a year, and there's 7 or 8 in the high school, and nobody begrudges that. But let me ask you from your point of view, maybe some of the things for our listeners out there, because the Utah people and of course the national people that listen to it are well aware of the bill. And so I wanted your take on it. I know you were in favor, but I know when a push came to shove, you were a minority voice up there in the Joint Legislative Committee. Right.
And I would support that. I know that in our district, we do pay a stipend to our ADs. And so that was kind of the basis for, I think, some of the naysayers who thought, well, we're already paying them something, why this? But I think it is so important that everybody in the state realizes the training necessary for this position. I can't say that enough. I mean, I think you said one time that, anybody in the school, they'll ask to just be the AD, especially in our rural districts. And, that's all well and good. And I appreciate their efforts and I understand where they're coming from. They don't have the funds necessarily and that kind of thing, but it's just so invaluable. I said it once and I'll say it again. I had the best, and it's hard for me not to think of things in that same light. I think it's really necessary. They get the training and they get the just the necessary skills and tools that they need. That's important to me. So,
well, you're too kind. Thank you for your kind words. I'll go back without mentioning a year or any personnel, but you and I can go back to think about how important that training was to a time when we had to let 1 or 2 coaches go at Jordan High. And you and I both remember sitting in front of a magistrate, I think is the proper word, with documentation of here's the meeting, here's the signatures, they were there, this is what was discussed, all of those types of things. And those are the types of things that you talk about that unless you get some training, you won't have that as an AD. So thank you so much for sharing that. Let's shift gears and let's have you talk now about what a blessing it's been to you to represent the Jordan Board of Education on the UHSAA Board of Trustees, and how that's a little bit different look on things. The Board of Trustees, not the Executive Committee, and of course, I'll let you speak to realignment if you want, because that's coming up again in another 10 months. But
and I'm on that committee.
Yes, talk about that for a bit.
Okay, well, it definitely is a different perspective, but one that I was kind of used to. I mean, a lot of the people on the Board of Trustees have become my really good friends, and they're amazing people. They really are. I think the things that we do at the Utah High Schools Activities Association Board of Trustee meetings, very, very important for our student athletes. So important that they get what they need and that they have the support. I'm happy to say that, several sports have been sanctioned that wouldn't have been. I have feelings somewhat about those as well, but we won't go into that. But the things that we do over there it's such a great support to our high schools. And I wish that some of the high school people knew how much we care about the good things that need to happen at the high schools. And so that's what we do over there. We make hard decisions, and hopefully it's helpful to the high schools and especially our student athletes. They're our first priority, and we always emphasize that. So
that's so very well said. And of course, I've been on the executive committee for years as a representative from the UIAAA, but I think the general public, and I don't know if, I think it's probably okay to say that they get this us against them, or it's them in their ivory tower, and they'll agree with you 9 times out of 10, but that one time they disagree with you. And of course, then they think you're like a referee at an NBA game, and they think they can go crazy and speak improperly. But boy, that, it's being on the board of trustees and being on the executive committee there's a lot of good things that happen there, but it's not the easiest of jobs. It's not as easy as everyone would have you believe. So
no, it's hard decisions going on there. And you mentioned realignment, and that's always a real, just a tough job trying to help the alignment so that, things are a little bit equal, although it can never be completely equal. And
sure,
it's tough. That's a tough decision to make on the realignment.
That's when you get the schools that act like their parents, like the parents of kids. And by that, I mean, the realignment starts and you've got criteria for the realignment. Everyone says,
it's very specific.
Great. 18 to 24, this, that, whatever, this is good. We look at the natural break. Boy, those numbers are up there, and you see a natural break in the numbers, and it makes sense. But the second you put a school's name to that number, then all of a sudden it's just like the parent and the kid. Well, no, that's good for everything else, but that's not good for us.
Not good for me. Yeah. And I've learned so much about the politics involved. There really is a lot of politics involved, and I didn't realize that. I thought it would just be an easy, you go here, you go there. It's not. And then I learned, some of the new vocabulary, like bubble school and all those kind of things, So I've learned a lot in the process, but it's a hard process.
Yes, very well said. Share maybe some of the other successes you've had serving on the board of trustees, some of the fun things you've seen. You've mentioned the addition of some of the sports. Is there anything else you wanted to mention that way?
Right. The emerging sports has been, right up there. Also, why can't I think of it? Oh, gosh darn. I have it on my phone, but anyway, it's the sports for our disabled kids, and help me with
the unified
there
sports.
It is. Gosh, why wouldn't that come? Unified sports. I absolutely love that. And it's increasing. We've just added basketball and soccer. And now we're adding, I'm trying to think, something else this week that I'm going to go to. I can't remember. You got me on the spot, but that has been a really big success. And it's not only for those kids who have some disabilities, but it's for the kids who are their peers. And I think they are both, important to each other and really helping each other succeed and learning new life experiences. So I think that's a big one for me.
Well, and it's been huge, but I was in an executive committee meeting the other day. There's maybe half the states that have unified and half the states that don't. So I think Utah is to be commended for that. And I think the board of trustees is to be commended of that. So maybe you could share some positive experiences now you've had. How long have you been on the Jordan Board of Education? How many years?
I've been on the school board for 5.5 years. And I have an 8-year 8-year term. My second, fourth year term is coming up, in 2.5 years. So I've got another 2.5 years. So,
and share some of the positive or fun experiences you've had serving on the board, because that's something that very few people will be able to serve and understand how the Board of Education works. Once again, they paint the Board of Education as us against them, and that's a different thing than the Board of Trustees. So talk about some of your successes there.
Some of the successes that I've experienced, we had what we called a MOAB, and that was the mother of all boundary changes. And we changed every boundary in our district because of enrollment situations and new schools coming online. I mean, since I've been on the board, we have built, I think it's 9 schools. That's huge. That is huge. One of those being a high school, of course, a couple middle schools, and the rest elementary schools. But that's kind of unheard of. Plus, our enrollment has increased. In the last 5 years that I've been on, probably 10,000 students, pretty close. I mean, that's big. That really is big. So that's kind of, we've successfully gotten through that, changed the boundaries, hopefully made most people happy. And you can't do that all the time. We got through COVID. That was a success.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, who experiences that in their career? Not many people can say that they've gotten through that. We were able to do online school and transition to that quite easily. We've got a fabulous superintendent who he's able to see in the future, if you will, and know how things might go or what's going to be best. And we just kind of let him do his thing. We hired a great one there. We really did. We hired a great one. Other successes, trying to think, we've done a lot with our facilities, improving our facilities as far as safety. That was always one of our priorities, to make sure that our schools are safe. And so in all of our buildings, we've added the front security doors and make sure that we have people checking into the main office before they can enter our building, those kinds of things. And so those have been some of our priorities, and I think very successful.
Excellent. What's the favorite part of your job? And this is probably a 3-part question, because it could be the favorite part of your job when you were in the junior high. It could be the favorite part of your job when you were in the high school. And now the favorite part of your job as a district administrator, a member of the Board of Education. Or it all could be the same answer. So I'm going to let you answer that. How
it could be the same answer. The first one, I think, for me personally, is that I love to learn. And so I'm always learning, no matter what position I'm in. I have to be learning. I have to be experiencing, just feeling good about, knowing what I should be doing and that kind of thing. So education and learning has always been paramount to me. Second thing is, and this is just a theme of my life, people are very important to me. Relationships are very important to me. And so to make those connections with people in all of those different positions I've had was really very key for me. Students are always a priority to me. Student athletes are a priority. So people in general.
Very good. Let me finish up with a couple of questions. The first would be, if you had 2 suggestions for a brand new athletic administrator, someone who's just new in the job, a couple of years in the job, and they needed to follow these 2 suggestions in order to be a success, what would those 2 suggestions from you be?
I would say, go into the job with your eyes open and listen and learn as you go. Don't try to change things, overnight or think that you need to learn it overnight. Just prepare, listen with your eyes open, and really push for good training and good, talk to people who have had that position and know where you should be headed, and just be very organized. Organization is so important with an AD. I mean, you've got so many fires to put out, and you've got buses to order, and you've got, so you just have to be organized.
And that's all before 8 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. That's before your day even starts. Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's finish with this, Marilyn. And I admit freely that I plagiarized this from another interviewee on national TV. What question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
What question? And I thought about that, and I thought, you asked a lot of questions, Hutch. You really did. So I think you've covered things for the most part. Probably the question that I would say is, I would want to know if I made a difference, and your perspective on that.
Okay. And my perspective, having worked for you for those 5 years you were at Jordan, is that you absolutely made a difference. And I will say this, I know that when you first came, it was, to some people, not a big majority, actually a very small minority, but it's, it was either we have a middle school principal or we have a woman.
Yeah.
Or for a couple of people, it was, we have a woman junior high principal coming to a high school. What do they know? And they, of course, I was fortunate because I was able to work with you on a daily basis. Right. Outside of the math area and of course in the AD arena. But I can speak for the time that I was at Jordan because I had a few principals, and I can't think of any that make it a bigger difference than you did. So rather than ask me if you made a difference, then I will tell you that you definitely made a difference, and you're still making a difference because, you're not in education per se. You're not a principal, but I'm not an AD, but I'm still with the AD Association. I'm still working with the UHSAA, the same as you. And I think people like us can't just turn it off all of a sudden. So
that's true. It's true. I have to be involved. I really like being involved with kids, and that's the theme of my life, pretty much.
Well, there we go. We'll leave it at that. That wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection podcast. Once again, our guest has been Marilyn Richards, member of the Jordan Board of Education and former principal at my high school, Jordan High School. Marilyn, thanks for being on today.
Thanks, Hutch.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.